My ex-wife showed up at 3 a.m. Take the kids and go to my lawyer's office. I'm turning myself in. They're coming for you next. So, I ran. Jennifer was standing on my doorstep at 3:17 in the morning when I opened the door after 3 minutes of persistent knocking. She looked terrible, her hair tangled, her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep, her business clothes wrinkled in a way that suggested she'd been wearing them for days. Miles, I need you to listen very carefully. Take Sophie and Owen to Robert Hutchins' office right now. Don't pack anything except what you can grab in 2 minutes. I'm turning myself into the FBI at dawn, and the people I've been hiding from know where you live. They're coming for you next because they think I gave you the evidence. She pressed a thumb drive into my palm, and her hand was shaking. Don't open this. Don't look at it. Just give it to Hutchins and let him handle everything. I'm so sorry. I thought I could keep you all safe by staying away, but I made everything worse. She turned to leave, and I grabbed her arm, my brain struggling to process words that made no sense strung together. Evidence, FBI, people coming. We'd been divorced for 2 years after a marriage that imploded under the weight of her 80-hour work weeks and my resentment. She'd left suddenly, taken almost nothing, agreed to joint custody without fighting, disappeared into her pharmaceutical sales job, and barely saw the kids except scheduled visits. I thought she'd just stopped caring. Now she was telling me she'd been protecting us. What are you talking about? What evidence? Who's coming? My voice came out harsh, and she flinched. Jennifer looked back at me, and her expression was pure desperation. Meridian Therapeutics has been selling contaminated blood pressure medication for 3 years. At least 200 people have died from heart attacks caused by a manufacturing defect they knew about and covered up. I found the internal memos proving they knew. I copied everything and tried to go to the FDA, but they have people inside the agency. I tried the FBI, but couldn't get anyone to take me seriously until 2 days ago. Now the company knows I've been gathering evidence, and they've been systematically eliminating anyone who could testify against them. 3 people are dead this week, Miles. 3 people I worked with who knew what I knew. They made it look like accidents, but I know it was murder. And they think I sent you copies of the evidence because they intercepted emails between us from when we were still married. They think you're my backup plan. She was talking fast, words tumbling over each other in a way that should have sounded crazy, except her fear was too real, too visceral to be delusion. I never sent you anything. I never involved you in any of this. But they don't believe that, and they're going to come here to eliminate the loose end. So please, please take our kids and go to Hutchins. He's expecting you. He's already contacted the FBI, and they're arranging protective custody, but you need to survive the next 6 hours until they can get you somewhere safe. I stared at the thumb drive in my hand, small and black, and apparently worth killing for. Why not just destroy it? Why keep evidence that makes you a target? Jennifer's laugh was bitter and broken. Because 200 people are dead, and their families deserve justice. Because Meridian is still selling the contaminated medication right now, today, and more people are dying every week. Because I helped them cover it up for 6 months, before I understood what I was seeing, and that makes me complicit in mass murder. I can't live with that. I won't live with that. Turning myself in and testifying is the only thing that will stop them and maybe save some lives. But I need you and the kids alive, so please just go. She kissed my cheek quickly, a gesture so unexpected I froze, and then she was running back to her car, a rental sedan I didn't recognize. She drove away without headlights, and I stood in my doorway holding a thumb drive and trying to decide if my ex-wife had lost her mind or if I needed to wake up my children and flee into the night based on the word of someone I no longer trusted. The decision made itself when headlights appeared at the end of my street, moving slowly, searching. A black SUV with tinted windows that didn't belong in this neighborhood at 3:30 in the morning. I went inside and locked the door and ran upstairs to the kids' rooms. Sophie was 10 and slept lightly, her door cracked open so she could hear me if she had nightmares. I shook her shoulder gently, and she woke immediately, blinking in confusion. Dad? What's wrong? I kept my voice calm even though my heart was hammering. We need to leave right now. Your mom asked me to take you somewhere safe. I'll explain everything once we're in the car, but I need you to get dressed as fast as you can. Jeans and a sweatshirt. Don't pack anything. Sophie was smart enough to hear the urgency and scared enough not to argue. She was out of bed and pulling clothes from her closet while I went to Owen's room. He was 7 and slept like the dead, completely buried under blankets. I pulled him out and he mumbled protests, half asleep and disoriented. Buddy, I need you to wake up. We're going on a trip and we have to leave right now. I was already dressing him in whatever clothes I could grab, not bothering with niceties like matching or weather-appropriate choices. Owen started crying. That confused, distressed sound of a child woken too early and pushed too fast. I picked him up and carried him downstairs while Sophie followed, her backpack already on her shoulders, her phone in her hand. She'd put on sneakers and grabbed a jacket. At 10, she already understood crisis response better than I wanted her to. The black SUV was parked across the street now, and I could see 2 figures inside, silhouettes against the streetlight. They weren't attempting to hide, and that terrified me more than if they'd been subtle. They wanted me to see them, wanted me to know they were there. I grabbed my keys and wallet from the kitchen counter, shoved the thumb drive in my pocket, and hustled both kids out through the back door into the garage. My car was a sedan that I kept maintained carefully because I couldn't afford breakdowns with 2 kids depending on me. I buckled Owen into his booster seat while he cried, and Sophie climbed in front, her face pale and frightened. Dad, what's happening? Why is Mom making us leave? I started the engine and hit the garage door opener, watching it roll up slowly, agonizingly slowly. Your mom found out about something bad at her work and she's trying to protect us. We're going to her lawyer's office and he'll keep us safe until the police can help. It was an oversimplification that bordered on lying, but I couldn't explain pharmaceutical company murder conspiracies to a 10-year-old at 3:30 in the morning while fleeing armed men in an SUV. The garage door cleared and I backed out fast, tires squealing slightly on the concrete. The black SUV's headlights came on immediately and it started moving toward us. I floored it down the residential street, blowing through the stop sign at the intersection and turning left toward the main road that would take us downtown. The SUV followed, maintaining a distance of about 3 car lengths, close enough to track us but not close enough to force a confrontation in this neighborhood, where people might see and call police. Sophie was gripping her seatbelt with white knuckles. Owen had stopped crying and was watching out the back window with wide, scared eyes. I tried to remember where Robert Hutchins's office was located, a detail from the divorce proceedings 2 years ago that I'd deliberately forgotten. Downtown, 7th floor of the Hartley building, overlooking the river. That was 20 minutes away on empty roads, longer if I had to navigate traffic or avoid being run off the highway by corporate assassins. I grabbed my phone and called 911, one hand on the wheel while I accelerated through a yellow light. The dispatcher answered, and I tried to explain that I was being followed by people who wanted to hurt my family, that my ex-wife had warned me about danger, that I needed police escort to a lawyer's office downtown. The dispatcher's voice was professionally calm, but I could hear the skepticism. She asked if I was in immediate danger, and I looked in the rearview mirror at the SUV that was still following at the same careful distance. There's a black SUV following us. They've been outside my house and they're following us now. My ex-wife said people were coming to hurt us. The dispatcher asked if the vehicle had threatened me directly, and I realized how weak this sounded. No, they hadn't rammed us or pointed weapons. They were just following. That wasn't illegal and wouldn't generate emergency police response. The dispatcher said she'd send an officer to check on us, but couldn't promise immediate response, given that no crime had been committed. I gave her Hutchins's address and hung up, feeling helpless and frustrated. The SUV was still behind us, patient and methodical. We reached the highway and I merged into sparse early morning traffic, accelerating to 80 in a 65 zone. The SUV matched my speed exactly, Sophie was crying quietly now, and I reached over to squeeze her hand. It's going to be okay. We're almost there. Mom got us help, and we're going to be safe. I was lying, or at least making promises I had no authority to keep, but what else could I do? Owen spoke for the first time since waking, his voice small and scared. Are those bad guys following us? I wanted to tell him no, wanted to preserve his childhood innocence. But lying seemed worse than age-appropriate truth. I don't know, buddy, but we're going somewhere safe, and there will be people there who can help us. The Hartley building appeared ahead, a 15-story structure of glass and steel that looked dark except for security lights. I pulled into the parking garage and the SUV followed, confirming they weren't just randomly traveling the same direction. They were hunting us, and they were done being subtle about it. I parked near the elevator and grabbed both kids, pulling them out of the car and running toward the elevator bank. Behind us, I heard car doors slamming and footsteps. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that meant people were coming fast. The elevator took forever to arrive, and when the doors opened, I shoved both kids inside and hit the button for the 7th floor repeatedly, jabbing it while watching the parking garage entrance, where 2 men in dark suits were running toward us. The doors closed when they were 30 feet away, and I heard one of them shout in frustration. The elevator climbed slowly, and Sophie was crying hard now, her whole body shaking. Owen had gone silent and pale, the kind of shock that worried me more than tears. The elevator dinged and doors opened onto a dark hallway with office suites on either side. Hutchins and Associates was at the end, a frosted glass door with the firm name in gold lettering. I tried the handle and found it locked. Of course it was locked at 3:45 in the morning. I pounded on the door and shouted, "Robert Hutchins! Jennifer Westbrook sent us! Please open the door!" Nothing happened for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Then I heard the emergency stairwell door crash open behind us and those same heavy footsteps echoing in the hallway. The men from the SUV had taken the stairs. The office door opened, and Robert Hutchins stood there in casual clothes, his gray hair disheveled from sleep, his expression alert and alarmed. He was 60 years old, had handled my divorce with professional competence, and apparently was the kind of lawyer who came to his office at 4 in the morning when a client's ex-wife called with emergency requests. "Miles Westbrook, get inside right now." He grabbed my shoulder and pulled us into the office, slamming and locking the door behind us. Through the frosted glass, I could see the shadows of the 2 men approaching. They tried the door handle, found it locked, and one of them said something in a low voice I couldn't make out. Then footsteps retreating. They were leaving, but not giving up, just regrouping. Hutchins guided us through the reception area into his private office, where he locked that door too. The office was large with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, dark leather furniture, and shelves of legal books that probably hadn't been opened in years. Sophie and Owen huddled together on the leather couch while I stood frozen, processing that we'd just been chased through the city by people who worked for a pharmaceutical company willing to commit murder to protect profits. Hutchins was already on his phone, speaking quietly and urgently to someone. When he hung up, he turned to me with grim expression. "FBI is 10 minutes out. Jennifer contacted me 3 hours ago and told me everything. I've been working with Special Agent Lisa Vaughn on witness protection arrangements. You and your children are in extreme danger, and we need to keep you alive until federal agents arrive." I pulled out the thumb drive Jennifer had given me and handed it to Hutchins. She said this was evidence. She said to give it to you and not look at it. Hutchins took it carefully, holding it between thumb and forefinger. "This drive contains copies of internal Meridian Therapeutics documents proving they knew about contamination in their medication and continued selling it anyway. It also contains evidence that company executives ordered the elimination of witnesses. Jennifer spent 18 months gathering this while working undercover with FBI guidance. She was trying to get enough evidence for criminal charges that would stand up in court. She succeeded, but the company found out she was cooperating with federal investigators. They've killed 3 other witnesses this week, and they will kill anyone they think has seen these documents." He locked the thumb drive in his desk safe and turned back to me. The reason they're after you is that Meridian's security team intercepted old emails between you and Jennifer from during your marriage. They found messages where she mentioned sending you files from work. Those were innocent files, nothing classified or criminal, just normal work documents she wanted you to review for a presentation. But Meridian's people assumed she'd sent you the evidence as a backup, and that makes you a target who needs to be eliminated before you can testify. Sophie was listening to this explanation with a maturity that broke my heart. She understood that her mother had been secretly working to stop people from dying, that those people wanted to kill her mother and father and were willing to hurt children to protect their crimes. Owen was still silent and pale, curled against his sister. I sat down heavily in one of Hutchins's client chairs and tried to process. Jennifer said she's turning herself in at dawn. Why would she do that if she's already working with the FBI? Hutchins pulled out a bottle of water from a small refrigerator and handed it to me. Because Meridian has connections inside law enforcement and federal agencies. They have people on their payroll who've been tipping them off about the investigation. Jennifer realized someone was leaking information when witnesses started dying right after giving statements. She decided the only way to stay alive long enough to testify was to go into formal protective custody with FBI agents she personally vetted. Turning herself in is her way of forcing the issue, making herself a public witness that can't quietly disappear. Once she's in custody and her cooperation is documented, Meridian can't kill her without making their guilt obvious. But that leaves you as the loose end they need to tie up before she testifies. I asked when she was supposed to testify, and Hutchins checked his phone. Grand jury hearing is scheduled for 10 this morning. If she survives the next 6 hours and makes it to that hearing, Meridian's executives will be indicted on multiple counts of negligent homicide, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. The company will be shut down and their contaminated medication pulled from pharmacies nationwide. But they know this is their last chance to stop her, and eliminating her backup evidence is part of that strategy. The window behind Hutchins exploded inward with a shower of glass, and something metallic hit the floor, rolling. I had half a second to register it was a gas canister before thick white smoke started pouring out, filling the office with choking clouds that burned my eyes and throat. Hutchins grabbed both kids and pulled them toward the door while I stumbled after them, coughing violently. We made it to the reception area before the outer office door crashed open and the 2 men from the parking garage rushed in wearing gas masks. One grabbed Hutchins and slammed him against the wall hard enough that I heard the impact. The other came at me and I barely dodged, my lungs burning from whatever gas they'd deployed. Sophie screamed, and Owen was coughing so hard he couldn't breathe. I grabbed a heavy desk lamp and swung it at the man attacking me, connecting with his shoulder. He barely flinched and backhanded me across the face hard enough to knock me down. My vision went white, and I tasted blood. Through the chaos, I heard Hutchins fighting, heard furniture breaking, heard my kids crying, then gunshots. 3 loud cracks that silenced everything else. The office went still except for the hiss of gas from the canister. I couldn't see anything through the smoke, but I heard footsteps retreating and Hutchins's voice saying, "Stay down, don't move." The smoke gradually cleared, and I saw Hutchins standing over the bodies of both men, holding a pistol I hadn't known he carried. Both attackers were down and not moving, dark pools spreading beneath them. Sophie and Owen were huddled behind the reception desk where Hutchins had pushed them, both alive and conscious. I pulled myself up on shaking legs, my face throbbing where I'd been hit. Hutchins was already on his phone calling 911, reporting shots fired and intruders dead, giving the address in a calm, professional voice that suggested he'd done this before. When he hung up, he looked at me with steady eyes. I was military police before law school. I've maintained my firearm certification and concealed carry permit because family law occasionally involves domestic violence situations where clients need protection. Those men were going to kill all of us, and I did what was necessary to stop them. He was explaining himself, establishing legal justification before police arrived. I just nodded, too shocked to form words. The men were dead on his office floor, killed, defending us. Within 5 minutes, police arrived with weapons drawn, followed immediately by FBI agents in tactical gear. Special Agent Lisa Vaughn was a woman in her 40s with sharp features and an expression of controlled fury. She took one look at the bodies, at the gas canister still hissing smoke, at my bleeding face and terrified children, and started issuing orders that sent agents spreading through the building and securing the area. She pulled me aside while other agents checked Hutchins's account of the shooting. "Mr. Westbrook, your ex-wife is currently in FBI custody at our downtown field office. She surrendered herself 2 hours ago with full documentation of Meridian Therapeutics' criminal operations. We've been investigating this company for 16 months, and Jennifer has been our primary confidential informant. The men who attacked you were employed by Meridian's corporate security division, former military contractors with experience in wet work. We have evidence linking them to 3 murders this week. You and your children will be placed in protective custody immediately until the grand jury hearing concludes and indictments are issued." I asked if Jennifer was safe, and Vaughn's expression softened slightly. "She's in a secure location with federal protection. She insisted we prioritize your safety. Said she wouldn't testify unless we guaranteed your family was protected. That's why I had agents racing here, but they were 15 minutes out. Those men moved faster than we anticipated." She looked at Hutchins with something approaching respect. "Mr. Hutchins's actions saved 4 lives tonight. He'll be cleared of any wrongdoing. This was clean self-defense against armed intruders who were in the process of committing felony assault. Police were already processing the scene, photographing the bodies, collecting the gas canister and weapons the dead men had carried. Paramedics checked all of us for injuries. My face was swelling where I'd been hit, and Sophie had bruises on her arm from where one of the men had grabbed her. But Owen was physically unharmed, just traumatized beyond anything a 7-year-old should experience." Vaughn arranged for agents to drive us to a safe house while she coordinated with her team. Before we left, I asked her the question that had been burning in my mind since Jennifer appeared on my doorstep. Why did Jennifer push me away? Why divorce me if she was working with the FBI? Why not tell me what was happening? Vaughn hesitated before answering, clearly weighing how much to disclose. When Jennifer first discovered the evidence, she didn't know how deep the corruption went. She was terrified that approaching you would put you and the children in danger. She thought distancing herself, making the divorce look acrimonious and complete, would protect you by making it clear you weren't involved in her work. She was wrong about that, but her intentions were to shield her family from consequences of her investigation. The safe house was a suburban ranch home that looked aggressively normal, the kind of place that would never attract attention. Federal agents were stationed inside and outside, armed and alert. Sophie and Owen were given a bedroom with 2 twin beds, and I tried to settle them down to sleep, but neither could relax after what they'd witnessed. Sophie kept asking questions about her mother, about the men who'd attacked us, about what was going to happen next. Owen just stared at the ceiling and wouldn't talk. I lay down between their beds and held both their hands, trying to provide comfort I didn't feel. At 7 a.m, Vaughn arrived with updates. Meridian Therapeutics CEO Preston Lowell and 3 other executives had been arrested at their homes. The company's headquarters was being raided by federal agents, and forensic accountants were seizing financial records. The contaminated blood pressure medication was being recalled from every pharmacy nationwide. Jennifer was safe and had already given 3 hours of testimony to the grand jury. Indictments were expected by noon. But there was a complication. "We've identified a problem," Vaughn said, her voice tight with frustration. "Meridian has been moving assets offshore for the past 48 hours. They knew this was coming, and they've been preparing. We're seizing what we can, but millions of dollars have already been transferred to accounts in countries that won't cooperate with our warrants. More importantly, we've intercepted communications suggesting there are more contractors in the area with orders to eliminate witnesses. The 2 men killed at Hutchins's office were just the first team. There's at least one more pair operating in the city. I felt cold spread through my chest. You're saying we're still in danger even with those men dead? Vaughn nodded grimly. Meridian paid for a thorough job. They hired multiple teams as redundancy in case the first attempt failed. We're tracking down the second team but haven't located them yet. You'll remain in protective custody until we're certain the threat has been neutralized. The day passed in anxious waiting. Sophie watched television with the sound low while Owen sat beside me silently, still not speaking. Agents rotated shifts, professional and reassuring, but constantly alert. At 2 in the afternoon, Vaughn returned with news that the grand jury had issued indictments against Preston Lowell and 14 other Meridian executives and employees. Charges included negligent homicide, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, and racketeering. It was one of the largest corporate criminal cases in decades. The contaminated medication had killed at least 200 people and sickened thousands more. Meridian had known about the manufacturing defect for 3 years, had calculated that fixing it would cost more than settling potential lawsuits, and had deliberately continued selling deadly medication to maximize profits. Jennifer's testimony had been devastating and comprehensive, documenting every cover-up, every falsified safety report, every memo where executives discussed acceptable mortality rates versus production costs. She'd worn a wire for the last 6 months, recording conversations with executives who'd admitted to crimes thinking she was loyal. At 5 in the afternoon, agents located the second contractor team at a hotel near the airport. When federal agents attempted to arrest them, both men opened fire. The resulting shootout left 1 contractor dead, 1 wounded and captured, and 2 FBI agents injured but stable. Vaughn confirmed this was the last immediate threat. Meridian's security apparatus had been dismantled, and everyone involved in the assassination plot was either dead or in custody. We were safe, or as safe as anyone could be when they'd been targeted by corporate murder conspiracy. Jennifer was released from FBI custody that evening, and Vaughn arranged for us to meet at the field office under secure conditions. I hadn't seen her since she'd fled my doorstep 16 hours earlier, and the woman who entered the conference room looked hollowed out by exhaustion and stress. She'd changed into clean clothes, but her face was drawn, and her eyes had the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much. Sophie and Owen ran to her immediately, and she dropped to her knees to hold them, crying into their hair and saying sorry over and over. I stood back and watched this reunion, feeling emotions I couldn't name. Anger that she'd put us in danger, gratitude that she'd warned us in time, confusion about what happened to our marriage and whether any of it had been real. When the kids finally released her, Jennifer stood and faced me. I know you have questions, and I know you probably hate me. I'll answer anything you want to know. But first, I need you to understand that everything I did was to protect you and the kids. Every decision I made was about keeping you safe from what I'd gotten involved in. I asked the question that mattered most. When you left, when you asked for the divorce, was it because you didn't love us anymore, or because you were trying to protect us? Jennifer's face crumpled and fresh tears started. I've never stopped loving you. I left because Meridian's security team was starting to ask questions about my loyalty, and I knew they'd investigate everyone close to me. I thought if we were divorced and estranged, if you had no connection to my work, they'd leave you alone. I thought I could finish the investigation and testify, and you'd never have to know about any of this. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I underestimated how paranoid they were, and how thorough they'd be about eliminating threats. By the time I realized they'd tagged you as a potential witness, it was too late to do anything except warn you and pray you'd get to safety. She looked at Sophie and Owen. I missed 2 years of watching you grow up because I was trying to stop people from dying and protect you from the consequences. I know that doesn't make it okay, but I need you to know I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to. Sophie was crying again. But Owen finally spoke, his voice small and confused. Are the bad people gone now? Are we safe? Jennifer knelt down and took his hands. Yes, baby. The bad people are in jail and they can't hurt anyone anymore. You're safe. I'm safe. Your dad is safe. It's over. Vaughn explained the next steps. Jennifer would testify at trial, which would likely take months to prepare. We'd remain under federal protection until Meridian's assets were fully seized and there was no possibility of retaliation. The company itself would be dissolved, and its executives faced decades in prison. The families of the 200 victims would receive settlements from Meridian's remaining assets, though no amount of money could restore lost lives. As for our family, that was complicated. Jennifer had given up 2 years to work undercover and protect public health. She'd sacrificed her marriage, her relationship with her children, her normal life. I'd been angry at her for leaving, had told the kids their mother had chosen work over family, had built a narrative where she was the villain who abandoned us. Now, I understood she'd been the hero who'd saved thousands of lives at terrible personal cost. We weren't getting back together. Too much had broken between us and too much time had passed. But we agreed to co-parent, honestly, to stop pretending she'd left because she didn't care. The kids deserved to know their mother was someone who'd risked everything to stop corporate murder, who'd loved them enough to stay away so they'd be safe. The trial took 14 months and resulted in convictions for everyone indicted. Preston Lowell received 35 years for negligent homicide and conspiracy to commit murder. Other executives received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. The contaminated medication was definitively linked to 237 deaths, though the real number was likely higher. Meridian Therapeutics was dissolved and its assets distributed to victims' families. Jennifer's testimony was credited with bringing down one of the most corrupt pharmaceutical companies in history and triggering reforms in FDA oversight and corporate accountability. She wrote a book about her experience that became a bestseller and used the proceeds to fund a foundation supporting whistleblowers in corporate crime cases. Sophie and Owen adjusted slowly, with therapy helping them process the trauma of that night. They understand now why their mother left and why she came back. They're proud of her in a complicated way that acknowledges both the heroism and the cost. I rebuilt my relationship with Jennifer as co-parents and eventually friends, united by shared history and children we both love. We never reconciled romantically, but we forgave each other for decisions made under impossible pressure. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't listened to her warning, if I'd dismissed her as crazy and stayed home with the kids. We'd be dead, 3 more casualties of corporate greed and callous disregard for human life. Instead, we survived and helped bring justice to 237 families who'd lost someone to contaminated medication. That night changed everything, destroyed our old life, and forced us to build something new from wreckage. But we're alive, and the people responsible for mass murder are in prison. That's not nothing. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.